Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into a whole stack of information, and we'll pull out the really important nuggets of knowledge just for you. Today, we're tackling something that affects almost all of us, but often feels incredibly complex: financial advice, and the intricate rules that govern it. Now, our sources for this deep dive are pretty illuminating. We've got direct excerpts from a document called Conduct of Business Requirements 1. It's straight out of the FCA handbook. So our mission, basically, to demystify these rules, help you understand how financial advice actually works, what protections are there for you, and, well, help you feel more informed, more empowered when you deal with financial services.
Exactly, and it's not just about listing regulations, is it? It's understanding the why. Why do these rules even exist, and how do they really shape that relationship between you and your advisor? It's about making it clearer.
Okay, so let's cut right to it then. These Conduct of Business source books,
Well,
COBSS. What actually are they? Why are they so important?
Right. Think of COBS as like the rule book for how financial advisors have to behave. These are the core regulations from the FCA, that's the Financial Conduct Authority. They dictate exactly how advisors interact with clients. It's a really key part of the FCA handbook. Sits right in the business standards section. But what's really crucial to grasp is that COBS isn't operating in isolation. It's part of a whole family of rule books for different areas. So you got BCOBS for banks, MCOB for mortgages, ICOBS for insurance, even CMCOB for claims management. It shows the breadth, doesn't it? There's a specific detailed set of rules for pretty much any financial service you might use. It's not just one size fits all.
That makes sense. I mean, not all clients are the same, are they? You've got huge differences in financial knowledge experience, so the rules must treat them differently.
Absolutely. Yeah, the sources lay out three main types of client, and each gets sort of a different level of protection. So at one end, you've got eligible counterparties. These get the lowest level of protection. Why? Because they're assumed to be really sophisticated. We're talking governments, central banks, big financial institutions. The major players. They understand the game. Then, moving down a step, you have professional clients. These need a bit more service than the counterparties. Often large companies, institutional investors. Again, the assumption is they've got enough experience, they can handle financial risk. And interestingly, someone can actually choose to be treated as a professional client, an elective professional client, if they meet certain tests, basically opting out of some protections.
okay.
And then you've got the category most people listening probably fall into, retail clients.
Okay.
Now, these people get the highest level of investor protection. It covers, the vast majority of us. The source calls it the person in the street, someone who might not have that deep, basic understanding of complex finance.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting for you listening. Our sources actually have this clear visual, like a pyramid. It shows the client categories and how protection increases as the assumed knowledge and experience go down. So if you're a retail client, you're right there at the top of that pyramid with the strongest safety nets. It's like the system saying, okay, we've got your back.
Hmm.
So understanding your category is key. But then there's the advisor guiding you. What's the difference between an independent and a restricted advisor? That sounds pretty crucial.
Oh, it's absolutely critical, yeah. An independent financial advisor, or EFA, is someone who can advise on products from, well, the whole market, a sufficiently diverse range. Their advice isn't supposed to be limited or biased because of ties to one particular company or product range. What's interesting is they can still be independent even if they specialize, say, in pensions, as long as they look at a broad enough range within pensions. It's about that breadth.
Okay, so independent means whole market view, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. Now, contrast that with restricted advice. It's kind of what it says on the tin. It's focused on a limited selection of products or providers. So by definition, it's not independent.
Huh.
Now, firms often use panels, like a list of providers they know and trust. That's allowed. But the rules say these panels have to be broad enough, they need regular review, and importantly, the advisor must be able to recommend something off panel if it's genuinely better for the client. The client's interest has to come first.
That's a really vital point. Especially when you hear about pension and investment scams, which the sources warn about. It really highlights why getting qualified advice, whether it's independent or restricted, is so important for protecting yourself. And advisors should be helping spot those red flags. But I'm curious, thinking about restricted advice, is there like a key pitfall? What's the one question you absolutely must ask a restricted advisor?
That's a really good question. Look, the main thing with restricted advice isn't that it's inherently bad, but just that it is limited. So the absolute must-ask question, it's gotta be, okay, what are the limits here? Which providers or products can't you recommend to me? A good advisor will be totally upfront about
Got
that.
it. Be clear on the boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay, now what if you, the client, decide to sort of go to loan? You pick an investment yourself without a recommendation. That's execution only, right?
It's exactly execution only. In that case, the firm is just acting as, well, an order taker, a facilitator. They don't give advice. And because they don't give advice, the rules about checking if the investment is suitable for your specific situation, they don't apply in the same way. So you, the customer, take full responsibility for that choice. The firm isn't liable if it turns out to be unsuitable. But, and this is critical, there's a need for clear and credible evidence. The Financial Ombudsman Service, the FOS, they're really hot on this. Firms have to be able to prove you knew it was execution only, prove you didn't ask for advice, and prove you made your own decision. They can't just tick a box. They need proof.
So what does that actually mean for you, the listener? Well, it emphasizes that even if you're going execution only, especially with complex stuff, there's still usually an appropriateness test. The firm still needs to check your basic knowledge and experience with the risks involved. It's like a quick check. Do you actually understand what you're buying, even if the final choice is yours? Right. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. How about the way financial products are advertised? Promotions, everything from ads to cold calls? What are the rules there?
Okay, financial promotions. Basically, it's any invitation or inducement to engage in investment activity. That's the official jargon. So yeah, it could be an advert, a website, a phone call, a presentation, anything trying to get you to invest. And the key rule, they can't just put anything out there. Promotions must be prepared or approved by an authorized firm. And the absolute core principle, especially for us retail clients, is they have to be clear, fair, and not misleading. That's the mantra.
Clear, fair, and not misleading. Sounds simple, but probably tricky in practice.
It can be. So specifically, promotions need to be accurate. They can't just hype up the potential benefits without also clearly showing the risks. That's crucial. They have to be understandable to an average person in the target audience, not filled with jargon. And they must clearly state the regulator's name, the FCA. There are also rules about comparisons. They need to be fair, balanced, meaningful, not comparing apples and oranges. And past performance, big warnings needed there. It cannot be the most prominent feature, and it absolutely must come with that health warning. Past performance is not necessarily a reliable indicator of future results. Plus, data usually needs to cover at least 5 years. Can't just show a lucky streak.
Good. And those cold calls, unsolicited promotions, I'm glad there are strict rules there.
Oh, yes. They're heavily restricted, only allowed for certain types of investments. And even then, calls have to be at an appropriate time of day. The rules specify 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Saturday, so no ridiculously early or late calls pushing investments.
Thank goodness for that.
And just to add, there's also the Advertising Standards Authority, the ASA. They have a broader remit across all advertising. They ensure ads are legal, decent, honest, and truthful, covering things like taste and decency too. So there's oversight from multiple angles.
Okay, useful to know. Now let's talk money. How advisors get paid, advisor charges. I hear there's been a really big shift here.
Huge shift, yeah. Historically, you see, advisors were often paid by commission from the company whose product they sold you. And the problem, potentially, was that could skew the advice, right, towards products paying higher commission. Maybe not the absolute best fit for the client. So the big change came on January 1st, 2013. Since then, firms giving investment advice generally have to be paid through advisor charges agreed with the client, not by commission from the product provider. Now, commission might still be okay for some insurance sales, but for investments, it's mainly charges now.
And the idea is that makes it more transparent, aligns interests better.
Exactly. That's the goal. These charges have to represent fair value. They need to be based on the service you actually get. And fundamentally, they must reflect your best interests. Transparency is massive here. All charges have to be disclosed right at the outset. Clearly, fairly, not misleadingly. And firms can't set up schemes where the charges end up being more than the agreed fee or give you cash back on the charge without your explicit say-so. You pay for the advice, essentially.
Right. You're paying for their time and expertise. Okay, let's unpack this next bit. Initial disclosure. What absolutely must an advisor tell you before you even start talking business properly? Seems like a consumer rights checklist.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, before business gets going, they have to give you a whole load of information. It has to be in writing or some other durable medium. So things like their contact details, how you'll communicate, a clear statement they're authorized by the FCA, that's vital. And crucially, whether the advice is independent or restricted, that key difference we talked about.
Okay, makes sense. What else?
Well, also information on how they manage investments, if they do that, and how they look after your money and access client money rules.
Hmm.
They need to detail their charging structure, how they charge, what the total costs might be, including what happens if you cancel a product later on. And finally, really important this, details of their complaints procedure, how to complain to them, and also about the Financial Ombudsman Service, FOS, and the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, FSCS. You need to know your rights if things go wrong.
Wow, that's a lot. Our source actually has a diagram summarizing all this, the summary of initial disclosure requirements. It's a great visual checklist for anyone engaging an advisor.
It really is, yeah. And
Yeah.
just one more point on this. For what they call designated investment business, like managing assets for you or dealing with packaged products, there also needs to be a written client agreement. This basically sets out the rights and obligations for both you and the firm. It's like the contract for your relationship.
Okay, now we're getting to the real heart of it, I think. Suitability.
Right.
Making sure the advice you get is actually right for you. How do the rules ensure that happens? This feels like the most critical part for the listener.
It absolutely is. This is fundamental. An advisor must only make a personal recommendation if it's genuinely suitable for the client. That's the core obligation. And to do that, they have to gather a ton of information about your personal and financial circumstances. This happens through what's called a fact find. It's a deep dive into your situation. The recommendation itself has to tick several boxes. It needs to meet your needs both now and likely in the future. It has to be affordable for you. It must be consistent with your risk profile, how much risk you're willing and able to take. And it needs some flexibility for future changes in your life.
And they have to talk about the risks involved too, right?
Oh, definitely. They need to discuss things like, is your capital guaranteed? How might income levels fluctuate? What could affect a claim on an insurance policy? How deep they go depends on your experience, of course. If you're a seasoned investor, it might be different than for a complete beginner. Think about it. Like, if you're 50, aiming to retire in 10 years, recommending a super high-risk, long-term venture capital fund, probably not suitable, even if it has high potential returns. It just doesn't fit the timeline or likely risk tolerance.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that ties into attitude to risk or risk appetite. The sources explain that as your psychological ability to cope with loss. It's not just numbers. It's about how you feel about risk.
Exactly. It's very personal. And all this information, the fact find, your objectives, your risk attitude, it all feeds into something called a suitability report. These reports are mandatory for certain recommendations, like life policies, pensions, unit trusts, OEICs, common investment products. And the report has to clearly explain why the advisor thinks this specific product is suitable for you. It links back to all the information they gathered. It should also spell out any potential downsides or disadvantages, any periods where your money is locked in. And critically, it has to be written in clear, concise, and plain English. No excuses for confusing jargon.
And there are time limits too. They have to give you this report before you commit.
Yes, generally for retail clients getting investment advice, the suitability report must be provided before the transaction is concluded. So you get that chance to read it, digest it, ask questions before anything is finalized. It's a key protection.
Good stuff. Okay, so besides the advice suitability, what about the products themselves? Are there specific documents explaining those? Product disclosure?
Yes. So for many packaged products, you'll get a key features document, or KFD. This outlines what the product is, how it works, the main terms, the risks, how to complain. Your advisor gives it to you, but the company providing the product actually prepares it. It's meant to give you the essential info.
Okay, KFDs. Anything else?
Well, then you get into things like kids and kids. Sounds like alphabet soup, I know. So kids are key information documents for PRIPEs, that's packaged retail and insurance-based investment products, a very broad category. And kids are key investor information documents for UCITES, which are common types of investment funds like unit trusts and OEICs. Both kids and kids are basically short, standardized pre-sale documents. The idea is to give you the necessary info in a common format, making it easier to understand the product and compare it with others.
Standard format sounds helpful for comparison.
In theory, yes. Although it has to be said, the EU's PRIPEs KID regulation has been pretty controversial. Many felt it was too rigid, highly prescriptive, sometimes making things more confusing, ironically. The UK is actually looking to replace it with a new UK retail disclosure framework called CCI, which might hopefully be a bit more user-friendly, especially for UCITES funds. We'll see.
And isn't there a risk rating thing in those kids?
Oh, yes, the SRNI, the Synthetic Risk and Reward Indicator. It's a scale, usually 1 to 7, 1 being lowest risk potential reward, 7 being highest. It's designed to give you a quick visual snapshot of the product's risk level. Quite useful, actually.
Definitely useful. Okay, another really important protection for consumers, cooling off periods. Your right to change your mind. Can you break those down?
Absolutely vital, these. For most packaged investments or insurance policies, you get a statutory cooling off period, a window where you can cancel the contract without penalty. It's your safety net if you have second thoughts after signing up.
How long do you get?
It varies. For life insurance, pensions, and certain longer-term insurance contracts, it's usually 30 days. For most other investments, like unit trusts and general insurance policies, it's typically 14 days. And the clock starts ticking either from when the contract begins or when you receive all the contractual terms and conditions, whichever is later. So they can't start the clock before you have the full info.
And if you do cancel?
Generally, you get a full refund of any premiums you've paid, usually within 30 days. The slight catch for investments is if the market value has dropped between you buying and canceling, you might only get back the reduced amount. The firm isn't on the hook for market falls during that short period, but the firm does have to prove they sent you the cancellation notice outlining your rights. It's a really solid piece of consumer protection, like an undo button.
An undo button. I like that. Okay, one last area, briefly. Record keeping. Sounds a bit dull, maybe, but why is it important for firms to keep good records?
It might sound administrative, but it's absolutely fundamental. Firms must keep clear, accessible records about everything their client relationships, the advice given, recommendations made, and these records have to be kept safe, protected from being lost or tampered with. Why? It's all about accountability, transparency. If there's ever a query or a dispute down the line, those records are the evidence. They allow regulators or the ombudsman or even the firm itself to reconstruct what happened and why. It underpins everything else, really. Without good records, proving suitability or proper disclosure becomes incredibly difficult. It's the paper trail that protects everyone.
Right. Accountability makes perfect sense. Wow. Okay, we have really dug deep today, haven't we? We've gone from understanding client types, the independent versus restricted advisor distinction, through financial promotions, how charges work, suitability reports, kids, cooling off periods, a huge amount.
We certainly have. And I think the overarching theme, pulling it all together, is that these regulations, the COBS rules, the disclosure requirements, suitability, they're all fundamentally there to protect you, to make sure you get clear, fair information, that you're treated properly, and that you have protections in place in this complex financial world. It's about building trust and setting standards.
Definitely. So here's something to think about as we wrap up. Given everything we've discussed today, all these meticulous rules and protections, how might understanding these conduct of business requirements actually change the way you approach your next financial decision? Or maybe even just change the questions you'll ask your next financial advisor? Something to mull over. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.